Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Philly Sports Eagles pregame show brought to you by SeatGeek. Use code Philly Sports Report to save $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase. Today, the Eagles take on the Buffalo Bills, back wearing the Kelly Green uniforms at the link. The 9-1 Eagles look to become the first team in the NFL this season to reach the 10-win benchmark, and the Bills 6-5 coming to Philadelphia. Sam, it was a short week. It felt like I just talked to you a couple days ago. Well, I did. It was only 6 days ago. How you doing? How are we feeling here in Week 12?
Feeling great. With the Eagles and the Kelly Green back, we know it's going to be a very aesthetically pleasing game. Very excited to break out the Kelly Green gear again. Sadly, this is the last one of the season, but excited for many more of them to come. And like you said, the Eagles have an opportunity to be the first team in the NFL to win 10 games this season. They also have an opportunity to be the first team in the NFL to clinch a playoff spot. So while some people may say that this isn't a very important game for the Eagles, it is definitely important, and I can't wait for it to get underway.
Clinching a playoff spot in Week 12 with so many weeks left, that is crazy. I didn't realize that. But yeah, here we go. Clinching a playoff spot here in late November. So let's start with the quarterback matchup. It is Josh Allen against Jalen Hurts. We'll start with Hurts. His record this season, his 9-1, passing yards of 2,497, a completion percentage of 68.5, 15 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, passer rating of 94.8. He also has 324 rushing yards with 8 rushing touchdowns. Hurts did not have the most pleasing game numbers-wise, but he found a way to win. Again, what did you see from Hurts last week? What should we expect this week?
Yeah, like you just said, I think that's the biggest thing is that he found a way to win. While the stats aren't going to jump off the page from last week, Jalen made plays when Patrick Mahomes didn't, and that was just what the game came down to. Jalen showed a little bit that his knee might be a little bit better coming off of that bye, getting a little bit of rest, being able to run around a little bit, but he made the throw deep to Devontae Smith, and he made the play over the middle to Devontae Smith, where Patrick Mahomes and his teammates weren't able to make those plays, and that ended up being the difference in the game. We've seen a lot of people say that Jalen doesn't deserve to be maybe in the MVP conversation just because his numbers may not look as great as other quarterbacks, but last week you saw that Jalen makes enough plays to be able to win the game. I think a lot of the problems last week was that the Chiefs just have a great defense. Their defensive line is outstanding. As we saw in the first half, they were able to really get to him and pressure him and make him have to move outside the pocket and make quick decisions. And honestly, the coaching just wasn't up to par last week in most of the game as well. I mean, Brian Johnson had a lot of questionable calls where he wasn't exactly putting his players in the best situations to succeed. So hopefully we'll be able to be better from that standpoint today. But overall, just the biggest thing you take away from the game last week is that nobody goes into Arrowhead and beats the Chiefs. Nobody goes into Arrowhead and beats Patrick Mahomes when they're losing by 10 points at halftime. And the Eagles, led by Jalen Hurts, was able to do just that. And it was an extremely impressive performance from the team as well as Jalen last week.
Something about this team is just they always find a way to win no matter what adversities they face. Is that on the team for always finding that way, or is that Nick Sirianni? Because we've seen that the last couple of years ever since his Flowers speech.
I think it starts at the top. I think Nick Sirianni definitely plays a big role in that, but it is definitely hard to take any of the, I guess you would say, the success away from that from Jalen. I think it's just a combination of the two. As we've seen over the past couple of years that these two guys have just done whatever it takes to win these games, and it's hard to say exactly who is going to be able to take credit for that, but I think one of the biggest things is that the players seem to rally behind Nick Sirianni, and with him at the helm, they have a never say die kind of attitude where they know that no matter what game it is, what situation it is, as long as he is pulling the strings, that they have a chance to come back in that game. And same goes for Jalen. It seems like Jalen, or it doesn't seem like, we all know Jalen has that cool, calm demeanor, and I think the players rally around that as well. We've seen them come back in so many games over the years where they were down big points late, down big points early, and Jalen was able to carry them back. So I think it just goes to show you how well things are working at the top with the head coach and quarterback duo right now. I think it's something that some fans and some teams and national media will overlook of how well these two guys just win games together. It may not be always the prettiest style of football. It may not be always the prettiest wins, but at the end of the day, they're coming home with another one added in the W column, and it's definitely something we can't take for granted.
Yeah, we have 9 wins in that column, looking to become the first team to clinch the playoffs tonight and get their 10th win this season. Let's move on to the other quarterback facing coming into Philadelphia. Is this his first time in Philadelphia, Josh Allen? I believe so.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, because we played him in 2019 in Buffalo, and Carson Wentz, starting quarterback of the Eagles at the time, came out.
Miles Sanders went crazy that game.
He did. What a game. Let's look at Josh Allen. His record so far this season, they are 6-5. I wrote the wrong record in our sheet. But he is 6-5 with 2,875 passing yards, completion percentage of 69.6, 22 passing touchdowns, 12 interceptions, a passer rating of 69.9, including 261 rushing yards and 7 rushing touchdowns. Josh Allen has been Mr. Inconsistent so far in 2023. What should we expect from him in the Bills offense today?
Well, when we talk about Jalen, and when I talk about Jalen, one of the biggest things that he has to improve on this season is the turnovers. And when you look at Jalen's turnovers with 9 interceptions this season, it seems like a lot. But then you hear Josh Allen with 12 interceptions, and it just kind of puts into perspective of how Jalen's playing this year. Coming into the league, no one really thought anything of Josh Allen. Obviously, he was a really high pick, but everyone kind of wrote him off after his first few seasons. And then he had the famous Josh Allen leap where he catapulted himself into MVP conversations and top of the league quarterback conversations. And he has all the tools to be a great quarterback in this league, but his biggest downfall is going to be those turnovers. He is just way too reckless with the ball. He puts the ball in harm's way too much. And that's the biggest thing that's really come back to bite him so far this season. When he played a couple years ago, people would just right away the turnovers because, one, maybe the Bills were winning games, or two, he would have a lot of turnover-worthy plays, but they weren't exactly turning into turnovers. But I think the biggest thing that people would say is, well, the Bills are winning games, so it can't really affect him that much. And even in the beginning of this season, people will talk about how the Bills were still winning games despite Josh Allen's turnovers. But that has kind of turned around this season for the rest of the season, not just the beginning, where now his turnovers are really starting to affect these games. And the Bills, along with Josh Allen, have just found ways to lose games this season. We've seen them have a lot of close games where they've ended up losing. Like I said, Josh Allen has all of the tools to be able to beat you in this league and to be a great quarterback in this league. He's got an absolute cannon of an arm. He can put the ball in any spot. He can fit balls in tighter windows than anyone in the league can. But it's just a matter of if he's holding on to the ball. If he is being careful with the ball, if he's not being reckless with it, he's going to carve you up and down the field. He's going to hit deep shots on you. He's going to drop 50-yard touchdowns down the field. But if he is turning the ball over, it's going to be a long day for Buffalo fans, and that's going to be one of the biggest key for the Eagles today is to be able to force him into some of those turnovers.
Yep, and it's starting to rain a little harder at Lincoln Financial Field right now. They're saying it should rain throughout the game. Last week, we saw the Eagles play in some rain. Now they'll do it again 2 weeks in a row. We'll see how that affects Josh Allen of the Bills. Speaking of the Bills, 6-5 the Bills. Some people are starting to write them off. Some people are saying this team is still in. What are your opinions on the Bills? Are they the real deal, or should they just go by and might not even make the playoffs?
Yeah, one more thing I forgot to mention about Josh Allen. He is a great runner, but he also, like, when he passes, is a reckless runner. He is massive. He's like 6'5", 240, and he's not afraid to lower his shoulder when he's running with the ball. It can lead to turnovers. It can lead to fumbles, but it also can lead to a lot of big and explosive plays with his legs, and also obviously extending plays outside of the pocket with his legs. So that's with the rain today. It's definitely something to watch for Josh Allen. If he's starting to pull the ball down and we're losing contain on him, it could be a long day for the Eagles defense. But as far as the Bills, I kind of said it earlier, but it just seems like this season they found ways to lose games. They lost the first game of the season, or one of the first games of the season, to a punt return to the Jets. They had a penalty where the Broncos were able to win because they had too many men on the field. They've had other games where they just have made dumb mistakes that have lost them games. Their numbers are really good in terms of where they rate among teams in offense and defense, but they just seem to find ways to lose games. Over the past couple of years, the Bills have been one of those teams that people pick preseason to go to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl, but it just seems like every year in those big games, they never really come up big. They have kind of been living off the reputation of that probably one of the best NFL game we've seen in our lifetimes, in that playoff game in Kansas City where these teams just went back and forth throwing punches at each other into overtime, with the Chiefs able to win that game. And it just seems like the Bills have been kind of riding that game throughout the last couple of years of, they're going to be back, they're going to be really good. And it just seems like they fall down when there's a lot of expectations on them. This has been kind of their theme throughout their history of their franchise, going back to the Jim Kelly days where they lost 4 straight Super Bowls. So while I don't think they're definitely out of it, just because there is a lot of bad football being played right now in the NFL and there's a lot of spots open for playoff spots, I don't expect them to be able to do anything in the playoffs if they get there. Having to go on the road to one of the top AFC teams is going to be extremely tough for them if they do get a AFC playoff wildcard spot. But they're definitely a team that is going to be a tough win for any of their opponents. But it just seems like this year they've done too many things, a lot of self-inflicted wounds to just kind of put them where they're at right now.
Yeah, that'll certainly not help you out. We saw it. We've seen it so many times in the NFL. We saw it in the Super Bowl with the Eagles. If you're gonna hurt yourself, you're not gonna win. So that's what the Bills are currently dealing with. Let's move on to our position advantages for today's game. What advantages are you looking at today? There's some injured players out for the Eagles that might help out the Bills. What are we looking at?
Yeah, so you kind of alluded to it. I'm going straight to the lines today. So I'm doing a little different with the position advantages. I'm going to go a little bit different with position advantages in different aspects of the game. So I think the biggest reason the Eagles will win this game, or the biggest reason the Eagles will lose this game, will be because of the play of their offensive line. We will obviously get into it more in depth later, but Lane Johnson is going to be out for this game, kind of a surprise deactivation for him today. So I think the play of the Eagles offensive line is going to be the biggest factor into whether they leave today with a win or a loss. So I do think the Eagles have the advantage today with their offensive line versus the Bills defensive line in the running game. The Bills are 29th in the league against run per carry stat. So that means that they allow the 29th worst run per carry in the NFL. So for example, if a running back runs for 100 yards on 10 carries, their run per carry is going to be 10 yards. So the Bills are 29th in the league in that, and that will bode well for the Eagles. We saw last week with Cam Jurgens back, they were able to get their run game going a little bit with DeAndre Swift. He had a total yard game of over 100, and Jalen was able to run the ball a little bit in similar conditions to what the conditions today will be at Lincoln Financial Field. But on the other way around, I do think that the Bills are going to have the advantage in the pass rush today against the Eagles offensive line. The Bills have a lot of talent on that defensive line with players like Shaq Lawson, Ed Oliver, Von Miller, Gregory Rousseau. They have a ton of talent there, and we saw the Chiefs defensive line be able to wreck this Eagles offensive line in pass protection in the first half of last week. I heard on the New Heights podcast, Jason Kelsey and Travis Kelsey's podcast, that Jason thought a lot of it was miscommunication with them being away between him and Landon Dickerson, where the Chiefs were able to time up exactly when the Eagles were going to snap it, and they were able to figure that out, which allowed them to be better in pass protection in the second half. Obviously, the Eagles are going to be home today, but still, with Lane Johnson out, we've seen the fill-in right tackle, Jack Driscoll, get absolutely annihilated in games that he has been filling in for Johnson so far this season. And with him being a late scratch today, their Bills are going to move their pass rushers around. They're going to try to get Von Miller lined up against Jack Driscoll. They're going to try to get Gregory Rousseau lined up against them. They're going to try to get Shaq Lawson. They're going to move these guys around. So I do think the Bills, unfortunately, with Johnson's injury, are going to have the advantage in the pass rush today. And it's going to be massive for the Eagles' offensive line to try to hold up the best they can.
Yep, not good for the Eagles today with Lane Johnson. We'll get back to that in a little bit when we go over our inactives today. Notable matchups today. What do you have for the matchups that are notable?
Yeah, I kind of just went over it. I think just the biggest matchups of the game are just going to be on that offensive line. Von Miller, Shaq Lawson, Gregory Rousseau versus Jack Driscoll. I think that they're going to move them around so that way one guy is not going to be completely on him. I think they're going to give a lot of guys their shot to be able to cover him. And I think that that's going to be one of the biggest matchups today. And then another one not on the lines, I think that Dalton Kincaid versus Kevin Byard is going to be a big matchup. Kevin Byard was, except for one play where he had a miscommunication, he was fantastic against the Kansas City Chiefs. He completely held down Travis Kelce. He had a pick on Patrick Mahomes. He was that all-pro kind of safety that we thought we were trading for when we got him originally from Tennessee. And Dalton Kincaid, rookie tight end for the Bills, he kind of took over for Dawson Knox, and he has been having a great last few weeks with Stephon Diggs, kind of him and Josh Allen kind of feuding a little bit. Dalton Kincaid has become the kind of safety blanket for Josh Allen. One of the biggest things that turnover machine quarterbacks like is they like to have a safety blanket. We kind of saw with Carson Wentz how Zach Ertz was his safety blanket. Dalton Kincaid has definitely been Josh Allen's safety blanket over the last few weeks. So I think Kevin Byard versus Dalton Kincaid, if we're going to be able to slow down their offense, we're going to have to keep him in check today.
Yep, it's a rainy one at Lincoln Financial Field. Just saw a video of how bad it is there. It is starting to pour, so it should be an interesting one there tonight. And you could have been in that pour if you got your tickets on SeatGeek. SeatGeek is a ticketing app that makes it so easy to buy your tickets. All you got to do is download the SeatGeek app and use code Philly Sports Report to save $20 off your first purchase. Obviously, not the best weather game to be at. The rain obviously isn't great, but still could be in the ballpark. I was actually at Citizens Bank Park yesterday for the tree lighting. I got to go on the field, got to meet to the broadcasters, see the World Series trophies, and I miss being there. And I always would get my tickets on SeatGeek, so make sure you go to SeatGeek to get your tickets for any event. They have so many events you can get tickets for, so make sure to get your tickets on SeatGeek today and use code Philly Sports Report, save $20 off your first purchase. Also, holiday season coming up. Try and save some money when you buy your tickets. Christmas Day, Eagles, Giants, lots of fun stuff going on SeatGeek. So, SeatGeek standout stars, Sam, with the rain. Who do you got?
Yeah, and real quick with SeatGeek, if you're looking to go to a game that's cheap, you can basically get going to a game for just about nothing. I mean, I think we're about to use this. We're waiting for tickets to go down a little bit, but we'll be able to get into Sixers Magic for basically nothing thanks to SeatGeek. So definitely take advantage of that. But for standout stars, I'm going to go. The first one is going to be A.J. Brown. One of the things we haven't talked about yet, but Tre'Davious White, their star cornerback, has been injured, so he won't be playing today. And A.J. Brown has been he was held in complete check last week. Chiefs have great cornerbacks, and L'Jarius Sneed, he did an amazing job on A.J., holding him to just one catch for 8 yards. But we know A.J. is not going to be held down for long. I think A.J. is going to have a big bounce-back game today, going to be taking advantage of some backup corners out there for the Bills. Even though there is rain, we do know the Eagles are going to throw the ball a little bit, and I like an A.J. Brown touchdown today, so I think A.J. is going to have a little bit of a bounce-back game. And then DeAndre Swift, we talked about the weather a ton. Even though I do think the Eagles will use A.J. Brown some, it's no secret that they're going to try to run DeAndre Swift. And like I talked about in the position advantages, the Eagles do have an advantage in the run game. The Bills are very, very bad against the run. And hopefully Swifty got a little bit of some pep back in his step after a really big game last week, whether it's in that short passing game that they kind of got him going with a little bit with the screens or just in the straight up run game. I think DeAndre Swift's going to have a big game. And it is worth noting that he has had some of his bigger games at home. In front of this home crowd, his hometown team, obviously. So I think D Swift's going to have himself a big game today.
And it would be big if you have a big game, especially with the Bills' bad running defense, and of course with the rain, gonna kind of have some. It's gonna put some halt onto the throwing today, so If we can have a big ground game today, that would be great. So thank you to SeatGeek for sponsoring that segment. We move on to the um, inactives for today's game. For the Bills, Taylor Rapp, the safety, is inactive. AJ Klein, linebacker. Dane Jackson, the cornerback. Wide receiver, Deontay Hardy. And guard, Jermaine Ifedi is inactive for the Bills. For the Eagles, Milton Williams, the defensive tackle. Quarterback, Josiah Scott. Running back, Rashad Penny. Quarterback, Tanner McKee. And offensive tackle, Lane Johnson is inactive. Johnson woke up this morning, with soreness in his groin. He was a full participant all week in practice. Johnson received some treatment, an MRI, and worked on the field this morning with Jeff Statlin. So expect Jack Driscoll to start at right tackle for the Eagles today. The Eagles' record since the start of 2016. With Lane Johnson, they're 70-31-1, and without Lane, they are 10-22. So a massive loss for the Eagles today with Lane Johnson. Such an unexpected absence from him. How will this affect the Eagles today and their offensive line?
Yeah, I mean, it's really tough. Obviously, waking up today with him not feeling well, he battled that groin last year in the playoffs. He had to get surgery on it last offseason, so it's obviously not good news that he's struggling with that. I do think that if it was a playoff game, he would be playing. He went out and tried to warm up and then obviously decided not to play. But I do think with Lane's track record that if it was a playoff game, he would be playing. Even though that we can clinch a playoff spot today, this is the quote-unquote least important Eagles game over the next few weeks with San Francisco and Dallas. San Francisco, Dallas, and Seattle coming up, those games are going to matter way more for playoff seeding. So I do think that if he was to miss a game, unfortunately, it would be this one. Obviously, you don't want him to miss any games, but I think it's a little bit of a business decision here. Hopefully, it's going to be nothing that affects him long term. It seems like he may have just re-aggravated it a little bit. He'll be able to get a bunch of days off now. He'll be able to get treatment, and we know Lane's a fighter, so hopefully he'll be back for San Francisco next week. But he has been the premier tackle in the NFL. Him and Trent Williams are the top two tackles in the NFL over the last couple of years, and anytime you're going to be missing a player like that, the next player's drop-off is going to be significant, but the Eagles don't have a great backup right tackle. And they're just going to miss him a lot today. Hopefully Driscoll will be a little bit more prepared to play than he was in the last game when he had to come in the middle of the game. But we just got to hope the Eagles' offensive line will be able to hold up on that right side and be able to keep these pass rushers in check that the Bills have.
We saw it a lot in the first half last week at Kansas City. Jalen Hurts was sacked 5 times in 12 pass play attempts. And saw without Dallas Goedert that this offensive line really struggled. So no Goddard or Lane Johnson today. So that it should be interesting what goes on today. Let's move on to the Gamblers R Us Bets. Thank you to Gamblers R Us Podcast for being the sponsor. Not really sponsored, but putting their name on this segment for the Eagles pregame show. Gamblers R Us. You can catch that podcast on the Philly Sports Network on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever else you listen to your podcast. Sam, I hope you're listening. Last week, they hit some bets on Monday Night Football. So this week, the Eagles are -3. The over-under is 48.5. What are your bets this week for the Eagles and Bills, and what are your locks of the day?
All right. Well, I do like the Eagles with the points in this game. I do like the Eagles money line, so that's kind of put together right there. But I do like the under in this game just barely. You'll see that later in my predictions, but I do like the under, especially with the weather today. Some straight bets that I like, I talked about a little bit earlier, but A.J. Brown being held in check last week, I think the Eagles are going to try to get him involved early. I do like an A.J. Brown anytime touchdown. I do also like Jalen Hurts' first touchdown of the game. Seems like just every week Jalen Hurts gets a touchdown with that tush push, and you get a little bit extra money there, a little bit better odds to bet first touchdown of the game. So I think that's a little bit interesting. Hassan Reddick with a sack. He gets a sack every game. It seems like it's a lock at this point. If you're not betting it every week, I mean, it's kind of just almost free money at this point. We're going to knock on wood and hope that that continues. But Hassan Reddick's been one of the elite pass rushers in the league for a couple of years now, and he seems to get the job done just about every week. And then Josh Allen to throw an interception. Talked about it before, how Josh Allen has been a turnover machine this season. I do think that he might be a little reckless with the ball. The Eagles hopefully will be able to force a little bit of turnovers. Bad weather leads to turnovers, whether it's in the air or on the ground. And I do like Josh Allen to throw an interception today.
There you go. There's Sam's bets. You can finally bet. Florida just made legal, last week, I think? Or what did you say?
Last Saturday.
There you go. So Sam's in heaven right now. Hopefully he's listening to the Gambler Stars podcast. Thank you to them for sponsoring this part of the show. Let's move on to the keys of the game. By the way, a little bit of NFL news with the Falcons win over the New Orleans Saints. The Falcons are now in first place in the NFC South. So I don't know if that was on your bingo card for this year, but the Falcons are in first place in Week 12 in the NFC South. So that's kind of interesting. But let's move on to the keys of the game. Sam, what are your keys against the Bills?
All right. We've talked about it all day. It's been the theme of the day. Win the turnover battle. You have to win the turnover battle when you're playing the Buffalo Bills, especially against Josh Allen. If Josh Allen's turning the ball over, they tend to snowball on him. A lot of times we'll throw an interception, then he'll get two, sometimes even three. The Eagles have been turning the ball over. I mean, last week Jalen Hurts threw an interception. It wasn't exactly his fault, as A.J. Brown switched up the route mid-route trying to get him to go deep, and Jalen kept throwing the route that was called. But either way, it's still a turnover. It still counts all the same. So the Eagles need to win the turnover battle today. Also, I think establishing and sticking with the run. Last week, one of the biggest reasons the Eagles won that game is because they stuck with the run. DeAndre Swift was able to break free on a 30-plus yard run late in that game that set up the Eagles to score a touchdown, which got them within 3 points of that, or 2 points of that game, 3 points of that game. Without that run and without them sticking to the run, the Eagles may not win that game. So I think the Eagles, even if it's not working right away, the Bills will let you have some yards in the run game, so they have to stick with it. And then the last key is to keep Jalen upright. We talked about it all the time, this whole show with Lane Johnson being out, but we have to be able to pass protect. Jalen has been running for his life a few times over the last few weeks. We obviously know he has a banged up knee. It's going to be a bad field out there. Keep Jalen upright. Jack Driscoll, just come in and do your job, and I think the Eagles leave with the win.
There you go. Those are your keys to the game today. The Giants just got their third or fourth win of the season. The Patriots missed the game-tying field goal with no time left. So the Giants get a win. That's the only way that game could have ended, with a missed field goal by the Patriots.
The fact the Giants are trying to win games right now, or are winning games, is just it's horrible for their future, their franchise. We obviously love it. I love it, but objectively, them continuing to somehow win these last two games is just not setting them up well for getting the quarterback or even a great player of the future.
It's so Giants. It's so New York sports. It's awesome. I just think the downfall of New York sports has been awesome the last couple of weeks, or the last couple of months, a year almost. New York teams have been horrible, and from what I'm seeing is that the Mets are not going to get Ohtani, which is awesome. People were saying they were going to get him. He's not going there. Yoshima, we'll see what happens with him, but it's just the Rangers are really good right now. But other than that, the New York sports is it's good to see. It's very good to see. So let's move on to the FOCO. Sam Hine Fit Check. Thank you to FOCO for sponsoring the FOCO, or the Sam Hine Fit Check that we do every week. So thank you to FOCO for them. Click on this link to save 10% off any order at FOCO. Foco has their big Black Friday, Cyber Monday sale going on right now. So go do that. And you can also take 10% off on your SeatGeek order by clicking that link right there. So make sure to go do that. You get their overalls and bracelets and whatever, bobbleheads, whatever else they got. So thank you to Foco for sponsoring. Sam Hine, who has been wearing a different Eagles jersey every week. It looks like we have a new one tonight. What are we going with?
Yeah, we're keeping that the same today. We're rocking the Hassan Reddick Kelly Green jersey. Number 7, I think, is a great number. And Hassan, I feel like I talk about him all the time. I'm one of his biggest supporters. I just love how he plays the game, and I feel like he's kind of been underrated throughout the NFL. And when I was able to find last year, they didn't make Hassan Reddick jerseys until really late in the season. And then this year they were able to come out with them right away, and I was lucky enough to get my hands on one, and we're rocking with the local kid today.
There you go. So there's the Foco. Sam Hine FitCheck, thank you to Foco for sponsoring. Sam Hine, the closer. We talked a little bit of baseball. The Phillies are in need of some bullpen pitching. Do you think Hassan Reddick, the closer, is looking to close out for the Phils? Maybe close out a World Series championship this year?
I mean, he can't be worse than Kimbrel in the playoffs. So
I was at the ballpark yesterday, and they still were selling the Craig Kimbrel jerseys. They were very marked down. I was very tempted to get one, but obviously didn't get one. I would have just gotten it for the fun of it, but
Hassan made an appearance. My alma mater, my high school, was on the Turkey Bowl last week during Thanksgiving on WIP. Hassan is a Haddon Heights person. Unfortunately, we were able to give him a nice little beat down on Thanksgiving on WIP.
There you go.
But Hassan made an appearance. I saw some of my friends were able to meet him and get some pictures, so that was cool that he went out. And even though my Bulldogs got the better of the Garnets, it was cool. Haas was out there and being able to meet some of his fans.
Yeah, and I saw the video of Howard Eskin running over to ask him some questions. That's exactly what Hassan Reddick did not want to do at that night, but it was pretty funny to see. So Brandon Graham, a little bit of history today with the Eagles. Brandon Graham is playing in his 189th regular season game with the Eagles, breaking the all-time Eagles record. So Brandon Graham, obviously, so many legendary moments as an Eagle. What is your favorite BG moment?
All right. Well, I'm going to make you pick a different one because I'm just going to take the most obvious one. The strip sack in the Super Bowl. When you think of Brandon Graham, when you see that number 55 not hanging from the rafters, but he will be in the Eagles Hall of Fame for sure. That's the iconic play when you think of Brandon Graham making the biggest play in Eagles history with that strip sack of Tom Brady in the Super Bowl. I mean, there's no other play that even comes to mind. I mean, obviously BG's been here for a while, but he will go down in Eagles history with that play, and he's forever immortalized by that play. And it's awesome to have such a great guy and a great Eagle have that moment and had that moment in the Super Bowl. And I mean, that's the most obvious one. Yeah. I'm going to make you try to pull a deeper one out of thin air here.
I can't, off the top of my head, I can't think of any more that happened on the field, but more post game. And Derek Gunn used to be with NBC Sports Philadelphia, and Brandon Graham would walk off the field and start going. And just after any game, either win or loss, he would start screaming at Derek Gunn because Derek Gunn would always, they were good friends, and Derek Gunn was always keeping real and whatever, and Graham would always give it to him, and it was awesome to see after every single game. And I know, there's not much. I mean, obviously, Brandon Graham's such a great Eagle, so many great moments, but I mean, that strip sack, of course. And you mentioned that Brandon Graham, his number might not be hanging from the rafters. We have a little bit of time here, 4:25 kickoff, about 19 minutes away. So on this current Eagles team, who, in your opinion, will one day have their number retired by the Eagles?
So I think if Jalen continues his trajectory that he is currently on and wins a Super Bowl, he's going to get his number retired. I mean, Donovan McNabb obviously has his number retired, never won a Super Bowl, so Jalen has already tied him in NFC Championship game wins. if Jalen continues this trajectory. But I think 62 will not be worn by another player. I think Jason Kelsey, just over the past few years, with everything he has done, with one, obviously winning the Super Bowl, two, with his speech after the Super Bowl, three, his play after the Super Bowl, where he has been all-pro first-team center, I don't know, 5, 6 years in a row, and then his impact in the community, his not obviously his podcast has taken off, but his charity donations and his charity effect in the community, and just the love and outpour. I mean, him and Brian Dawkins are probably the two most beloved Eagles of the recent memory, definitely since 2000. So I do think Jason Kelsey will be a Hall of Famer one day, and most of the time when you get in the Hall of Fame, and unless for some reason you're Harold Carmichael, you're getting your number retired for the Eagles. So I do think that 62 will be up there in the rafters. And I mean, honestly, too, like 11, if AJ keeps on his, I mean, he has a chance to go down as the best quarterback. I was thinking of Carson Wentz as the best wide receiver in Eagles history. He already has the record for most receiving yards by an Eagles wide receiver. He has a potential to win a Super Bowl. He has potential to put up big numbers in the Super Bowl. Will they retire his number? I don't know. That it's obviously way too far down the line for some of these younger guys. But he and Jalen, I feel like, are on that kind of trajectory of, if they continue this and they spend their whole careers here and they continue their trajectory that they're on, you know, those numbers could definitely be up there. I don't know. I don't think Fletch gets it. Brandon, I don't think gets it. I think those guys are Eagles Hall of Famers, but I mean, to get your number retired, that is a special, special, special player. I mean, even like 25 wasn't retired. Like, the Eagles like to do these soft retirements, which is kind of stupid in my opinion. Like, if you're just going to retire the number, if you are not going to let anyone else wear the number, just retire it. Like, but I mean, I think 62 would be the only one that I think is probably a lock.
Yeah, it's tricky because there's no numbers that the Eagles have retired. You see, Sixers have so many numbers retired. The Phillies are going to add a few more coming up as they just changed their rules with how they retire the numbers, and it's just the Eagles really have 4 or 5 numbers retired. It's really not that much. So it's definitely going to be tricky for some of these guys to get in there. But I think the 3 you mentioned definitely have the best shot out of anybody on this team. And definitely a lot of Eagles Hall of Famers on this team. I mean, even just on the offensive line. Sure. Most of this offensive line, Lane Johnson, Jordan Mailata, a lot of these guys are going to be in that Hall of Fame. Offense, defense, obviously those 2 guys have been here forever. Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox, so many other guys. Darius Slay, probably not, but I don't know why I said him. But there's a lot of guys on this team, and a lot of guys from the Super Bowl team that still need to get into there.
Do you think 9 gets retired?
I was gonna ask you that.
I think they have to. He's the only quarterback to win a Super Bowl. If Donovan's numbers are retired, you got to retire.
Nick. Yeah, I mean, Nick Foles was not good in 2017 until that Vikings game, and then he just absolutely exploded.
But Nick also has the 26-2 season. He has the 7 touchdown game. Like, he does have the most size of Super Bowl, but I mean, he's the first quarterback to win a Super Bowl. He's obviously an Eagles Hall of Famer. He has a statue outside the stadium, but I think they do it.
Yeah, it's a horrible statue. I don't know why they. Doug Peterson, including, also has a statue outside the stadium. So, I mean, if you really want to talk about statues, but I think they should do it. I don't know where or if they will, but as you said, first Eagle quarterback to win a Super Bowl. He came in such a hard position to come in and do what he did. He outplayed Tom Brady, which just in itself is incredible. So I think they should do it. I don't know if they will or when they will. But let's get back on track to this Eagles-Bills game coming up. We are in our final part of the show, our game predictions. So, Sam, what is your prediction for it's apparently pouring at the link right now. So what are your predictions for the Eagles? Bills week 12.
Yeah, real quick, if we can, because I know we have a few minutes. One of those things I wanted to touch on was the Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen
Yep.
what's kind of going on with them right now. If people don't know, Stephon Diggs last year in the postseason kind of showed a lot of emotion because he wasn't getting the ball and was frustrated the Bills were losing. And a lot of people, including Stephen A. Smith, said that Stephon Diggs did not want to be with the Buffalo Bills anymore. So Stephen A. kind of put that out there, and then it's kind of been lingering, and Stephon's shown a lot of emotion, and he hasn't been doing great with the Bills. And Josh Allen has been kind of moving the ball around a little bit more than he has in the past. And then a couple weeks ago, his brother on the Cowboys, Trayvon, tweeted about how that they need to get Stephon out of there, and a lot of people think that that's just he's ranting to his brother about how he doesn't want to be in Buffalo anymore, and then Trayvon's putting that out there on the internet. We obviously don't know if any of this is true, but it definitely is an interesting dynamic. And Stephon Diggs is one to show a lot of emotion on the sidelines. And I think one of the big things too for today is that if the Eagles are able to kind of turn the ball over on Josh Allen, or if they're able to just hold Stephon Diggs down with Slay and Bradbury, they will start going at it on the sidelines. Stephon Diggs is not afraid to show emotion. We know A.J. Brown shows a lot of emotion on the sidelines, but him and Jalen are best friends. Doesn't seem like that's the same kind of relationship between Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen. So it's definitely just something to keep our eyes on as this game goes on. If Stephon Diggs is kind of pounding on the sidelines, it could be a good sign for the Eagles, as it kind of shows that they're going down. The Bills fired their offensive coordinator 2 weeks back. They had a big bounce back win last week, but a lot of times they get that little new coach bump where they get a big win and then they kind of come back down after that. So their offense will just be interesting to see how it functions this week. But with my prediction now, you said it, the rain is going to play a big factor into this game. I think that one of the things we haven't talked about yet today, but this is a big time trap game for the Eagles, coming off of a massive game in Kansas City, Super Bowl rematch, big emotional win, and then having the San Francisco 49ers the week after that. The Eagles will be able to really distance themselves for that number one seed with that win. Obviously, the 49ers have been talking a lot of trash, and it's a game that people have had marked on their calendars since the schedule came out. So this is kind of the classic trap game, but it just seems like this Eagles team is just – they just come out and they roll with their business every game. They don't get too high. They don't get too low. They just take care of business. And I think they're going to take care of the Buffalo Bills today. I think I have the Eagles winning 27-21.
All right, I'm right around where your score is. But really quick, before I say my prediction, I forgot to mention this in our FOCO ad, but the FOCO Philly Sports Mystery Box giveaway is live. You have 2 weeks to enter on X/Twitter or Facebook or Instagram. All you got to do is retweet the tweet that's out or like the post on Instagram. Follow Philly Sports FOCO and FOCO Bobbles and tag 2 friends in a comment. If you enter on Twitter and Instagram, it's an extra entry. So make sure you go enter right now on Philly Sports Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, or Instagram. You can win a mystery box with some assorted Phillies, Eagles, Sixers, or Flyers merchandise. A lot in there. So make sure you enter. Thank you to FOCO for teaming up with us to get that going. So my prediction, I'm kind of right there with you. It is a trap game, obviously. Eagles, 49ers next week. Chiefs last week. Lots going on around them. And trying to clinch a playoff spot, obviously, is in effect. Some teams struggle with that kind of pressure, but I don't think the Eagles struggle with any pressure. I think the Eagles win today 28-17. I think the Eagles run the ball very well today. I just think it's a flat-out Eagles win, and I think a lot goes down with the Bills during this game and after the game negatively. So that will I just think this is the game where it all explodes for the Bills as they become 6-6 and the Eagles become the first team in the NFL to get their 10th win. So that's it on our agenda. Anything else you want to go over as we're about 9 minutes away from kickoff? Or
Yeah, so I've listened to some sports radio this week, and just around the league, you kind of hear the talk about Nick Sirianni and his kind of emotional antics. And I'll be the first to admit, if he was the coach of another team, I would hate his guts. He's super
Yeah.
annoying. But at the same time, there is a complete double standard in the NFL right now when it comes to Nick Sirianni and other head coaches. Nick Sirianni is not the only coach in the NFL that shows emotion, not the only coach in the NFL that talks to opposing fans. He's not the only coach in the NFL that yells at refs. He's not the only coach in the NFL to be animated on the sidelines. Dan Campbell is extremely animated. No, everyone loves him, and everyone says it's a great thing that he does it. Mike McDaniels was screaming back and forth, talking to Jets fans on their game on Black Friday, getting into arguments with them on the sidelines while he was coaching a game. He was going back and forth with a Jets fan in the middle of a game. And everyone said that they love Mike McDaniel's spirit. They love his great energy. After they scored a touchdown, he was running on the field. Right before half, he was running down the field, sprinting to celebrate with his players. And everyone says about how great it is that Mike McDaniels does that. When Nick Sirianni shows emotion, it's a problem for some reason. And I get if you're not going to like coaches showing emotion on the sidelines, that's completely fine. But I just think that it's a complete double standard for it to be okay for some coaches to do it and not Nick Sirianni. People have a first impression of Nick Sirianni that he's a goofball and he's, whatever you want to call him, that people are unable to shake. I think it's a lot of the problems with the way that the league shows and handles Jalen Hurts. I think a lot of the league coming into the league did not think Jalen Hurts was going to be a good quarterback in the NFL. They're stuck to that, and they will not admit that he is a great quarterback in this league, along with a lot of people not being able to admit that Nick Sirianni is a great head coach in this league. Nick Sirianni obviously went to the Super Bowl last year. He's 9-1 this year. His record is amazing. If any other coach in the NFL did what he did in his first few seasons, they would have won multiple Coach of the Year awards by now, and Nick Sirianni probably won't win a single one. It's kind of ridiculous. Dan Campbell's probably going to win Coach of the Year this year when it should be Sirianni. The Giants head coach, his name is escaping me right now. Brian Dable won Coach of the Year last year, so obviously we're seeing this year he's not doing that great of a job. And I just think it's kind of crazy that there's just such a double standard for Nick Sirianni with the way he acts. And there's also, Jalen Hurts, him and Jalen Hurts just get disrespected around the league because they think they're carried to wins by their roster. But what good team in the NFL, what good team in any sport that has guys at the helm does not have a good roster or a good team around them? So yeah, just wanted to get that off my chest a little bit.
And yeah, I mean, I agree. There's a lot of things I think with it is people hate Philadelphia for some reason. They always have. I still don't understand it, whether it's the fans, whether it's just, I don't know. Like if you hate Philadelphia, you hate freedom and independence because the Declaration of Independence was signed in Philadelphia. So I'm not totally sure what I don't really get it. Do you hate Ben Franklin? Like what's going on here? So we got to end our show. Kickoff is coming up, but really quick, there's some news on Lane Johnson as my webcam just broke. So now I'm using my MacBook camera. So I don't know what's going on with my other camera, but I'll figure it out. So Lane Johnson's MRI today showed some inflammation with the soreness and the wet conditions. The Eagles took the conservative approach to hold him out this game. I think that's the right approach to take, especially with San Francisco coming up next week, because this is the easiest game coming up in this crazy stretch. So I think that was the right approach from the Eagles today.
Yeah, especially with the field too. The field's going to be wet out there. You don't want him slipping around. Like I said, from that, it seems like if it was a playoff game, he would be ready to go. But it just seems like that's very good news that it's not going to be a long-term injury for Lane.
That's for sure. So that's going to do it from us here on the Eagles pregame show, brought to you by SeatGeek. Use code Philly Sports Sports, save $20 off your first purchase. Thank you to our other sponsors, FOCO, the Gamblers RS Podcast. Thank you to all of them for helping support this show that we do weekly. So make sure to check out PhillySportsSports.com after the game for DJ Scott's post-game recap, and check out tomorrow for my observations a day after the game. Make sure to go follow us on X/Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, what else? Threads. I think that's it. And go make sure to enter that giveaway. Facebook. So don't go make sure to enter that giveaway. I know Sam's been wanting some Foco stuff. So maybe he'll go enter.
Still waiting.
Still waiting. We'll see what happens when we get around playoff time. So that's gonna do it from us. Thank you for watching. Go Birds.
Go Birds.